Today we're going to be working on Chapter 7, Section 4, which is Solve and Write Multiplication Equations, and this is going to start on textbook page 551. Let's get started. Alright, so at the top of textbook page 551, it says to scan the lesson and then predict two things that you will learn about solving and writing multiplication equations. So take just a second to go ahead and look that over, and hopefully you will come up with the first one, which says I will learn how to solve by dividing. So remember that inverse operation thing where it's basically undoing it. So you're going to undo a multiplication equation by dividing. And then the second piece says that I will learn how to use a bar diagram to solve multiplication equations. So we've been using bar diagrams frequently, so hopefully this is becoming second nature to you. Also, the vocabulary on textbook page 551 says that in this unit you're going to be learning about the division property of equality, and I can tell you it's probably very similar to the addition, subtraction, and multiplication property of equality that basically says if you do something to one side, as long as you do it to the other, the equation remains equal. So let's look at the vocabulary startup. It says the equation 3x equals 9 is a multiplication equation. In 3x, the 3 is the coefficient of x because it is the number by which x is multiplied. Fill in the table. The first one is done for you. So this is just different words that have the word co at the beginning. So you've got co-pilot, so then they wrote the word co-pilot. And this is the second pilot that flies with the primary pilot of the plane. So for co-author, it would be co-author, and that would be write something with someone else. So you would write something with someone else, you would be the co-author. Cooperate makes cooperate, and that means working together or to work together. And coefficient gives you coefficient, and here is the mathematical vocabulary for that. It says when a numerical factor contains a variable, the number with the variable is the coefficient. So that is the information that should go in your vocabulary startup. And it says Matthew is downloading ringtones. The cost to download each ringtone is $2. When Matthew is finished, he has spent a total of $10. Let x represent the number of ringtones. What does the expression 2x represent? So for this problem, the answer they've given you is that 2x should represent the cost of downloading x number of ringtones. So the 2 is because you have the $2 here, and x would be the number of ringtones. Alright, so let's go ahead and take a look at textbook page 552. It says solve a multiplication equation. A multiplication equation is an equation like 2x equals 10 because the variable x is multiplied by 2. Multiplication and division are inverse operations. Remember, there's that word inverse operations again. So you want to make sure that you write that inverse operations, they undo one another. So you want to have that out to the side there. It says to solve a multiplication equation, you're going to use division. So now we have solve 2x equals 10. So the reason I've set your page up like this is so that you can actually see what I'm writing and write the same thing on your page. So even though 2x equals 10 is written there for you, I would like you to write it again off to the side. So 2x equals 10. And then it says write the equation, so that's what we've done first, and then it says to divide each side by the coefficient of 2. So we're basically asking ourselves what's being done to this x, which is right there. 2 is being multiplied by it. So to undo that, we're going to divide each side by 2. So now we can cross out the 2's because 2 divided by 2 would give you 1. So you're left with x equals, and then 10 divided by 2 is 5. So x equals 5, and then they want you to plug it in to check your solution as usual. So again, to check, I prefer that your check actually be moved up to the side, not underneath it. So the 2x equals 10, then you have 2 times 5 equals 10, and 10 is in fact equal to 10. So you have checked your problem. All right, so you have your original problem and you have your check. Let's go ahead and look at the next example. Alright, so example 2 gives you the equation 3x equals 6. So let's go ahead and off to the side write 3x equals 6. And remember what we did before, we identified first what our variable is. Our variable is x. What's being done to x? Well, right now, x is being multiplied by 3. You can see that right here with this 3. So in order to undo multiplication or multiplying by 3, we're going to divide each side by 3. That's how we know to divide by 3 and not by 6, because you have to look to see what's being done to the variable, not the other side. The other side is kind of just like a tag along. So now 3 divided by 3 leaves you with 1, so that'll just be x on that side. And then 6 divided by 3 gives you 2. So now you have your answer of x equals 2, but you're not quite finished yet. You want to go back and check your solution. So remember that check should be off to the side. You need to start with your original equation again, 3x equals 6. Plug your answer that you got in. So we got this 2, so we plug that in right there. 3 times 2 equals 6. And 6 does, in fact, equal 6, so that is correct. So our answer here is x equals 2. On the line, I would prefer, actually, if you have, let's see, hold on, erase that. On your answer line here, I would rather you have x equals 5 and x equals 2. And then, obviously, we've already got the answer here, but let's cross it out for right now. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next one. And actually, what I said was probably just a little confusing because these answer lines over here are actually for the problems, the do it on your own problems here. So let me just go ahead and black those out completely right now because these answers have nothing to do with these problems that we just did. It just so happens that they were the same. So we're going to move on to our next screen here and we will do those on your own. Alright, so let's get started here with 3x equals 15. So again, we first ask ourselves what's being done to the variable. First, the variable is x, so what's being done to the variable is that it's being multiplied by 3. So in order to undo multiplying by 3, we're going to divide each side by 3. And again, this is how we choose to divide each side by 3 and not to divide each side by 15, because 3 is what's being done to the x. So 3 divided by 3 is 1, so you're left with x here. And 15 divided by 3 leaves you with 5. So your answer here is going to be x equals 5, but you also want to make sure that you're checking your work. So let's go ahead and do 3x equals 15. So notice in my check, I'm doing it right next to the problem, and I'm also going to go ahead and start with the original problem again. So now 3, and remember I said that x was 5, so I'm going to put a 5 in there, equals 15. Then I ask myself 5 times 3 is actually 15, and that is equal to 15, so my answer is correct. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and erase the slide, but you want to keep this information underneath A. So now let's go ahead and start with B, and it says 8 equals 4x. And what's special about this problem, I believe one of the things that they're trying to make sure that you understand is that the variable isn't always going to be on the left-hand side. Sometimes it's going to show up on the right. So you work the problem the exact same way, though. First, you want to identify what the variable is, and in this case, again, it's x. Then you want to ask yourself what is being done to x. Well, x is being multiplied by 4. So to get rid of that x, or I'm sorry, not the x, to get rid of the 4 that's tagging along with it, you need to divide both sides by 4. And again, you're dividing by 4 instead of 8 because 4 is what's actually attached to the x. So 4 divided by 4 leaves you with 1, which is just x, and then 8 divided by 4 is 2. So you get the answer 2 equals x, which is also the same as x equals 2. So either of those two answers would be appropriate. Then we want to go ahead and write our check off to the right. So we start again with the original problem, 8 equals 4x. Then we say 8 equals 4 times, and we said that x was equal to 2, so let's plug that in. Then 8 is equal to 8, and that is correct. Okay, and again, I'm going to erase B, so you just need to go ahead and go on to the, actually, I'm going to go on to a new slide. All right, so in C, the first thing you want to do is identify the variable. The variable in this problem is, again, x. Then you want to see what is being done to x. Well, remember, if something was being added or subtracted to it, you would see an addition or subtraction sign. But in this case, it's just a letter next to a number, so that means to multiply. So we're going to undo that multiplication by dividing. And remember, we chose the 2 to divide it by because that's actually what is attached to the x. So 2 divided by 2 is going to leave you with 1, which is just x. And then 14 divided by 2 leaves you with 7. So my answer here is going to be x equals 7. Then off to the side, I'm going to go ahead and start my check, which again starts with the original equation, 2x equals 14. Then you're going to plug in your answer, 2 times 7 equals 14. And then you will find out that 14 is in fact equal to 14, and that is correct. All right, now we're at the top of textbook page 553, and this was that division property of inequality that I was talking about. And as I mentioned, it says if you divide each side of an equation by the same non-zero number, the two sides remain equal. So 18 equals 18. If we divide them both by 6, as shown here, we get 3 on each side still. 3x equals 12. If we divide them both by 3, then our sides remain equal, and we can actually solve for x. So it says when you solve an equation by dividing both sides of an equation by the same number, you are using the division property of equality. So you just want to remember that so that you can do well in your vocabulary test and use the correct vocabulary. As promised, it did say that you were going to learn to solve the problems using a bar diagram, so let's go ahead and take a look at that. It says Vincent and some friends shared the cost of a package of blank CDs. The package cost $24 and each person contributed $6. How many people shared the cost of the CDs? So the first thing that they've done is changed it into words. Amount each contributed times number of people equals cost of CD. So then they've also defined the variable. So let's go ahead and define the variable. In this case, we'll say that X is going to represent the number of people. So X represents the number of people. Then you want to draw the bar diagram. So like I said, I realize it's already been drawn for you, but let's go ahead and draw one. Actually, let me go ahead and draw one down here. So you have a bar diagram here, and the whole bar diagram represents the $24 that was paid total. Okay, so you want to be sure that you understand that when you're making a bar diagram, the total should be represented somewhere on the outside so that you can show that that was the total. Now it's saying that each person paid $6. So for the bar diagram, let's go ahead and say, all right, if one person paid $6, now we need to know how many chunks do we need in order to make $24 happen. Well, in your brain, hopefully you said 6 times 4 is 24. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 6, 6, 6. So that's $24 in all. And so the equation that they actually came up with from using the bar diagram was 6x equals 24. Then you would divide each side by 6 if you were doing this with the numbers, and you'd be left with x equals 4, as you can see here. So then you can plug it back into the original problem, and the final answer says that there were 4 people who split the cost of the CD. All right, let's go ahead and try D on your own. It says in 2004, Penn Hadow and Simon Murray walked 680 miles to the South Pole. So we're going to underline that. The trip took 58 days. Suppose they traveled the same distance each day. Write and solve a multiplication equation to find out about how many miles they traveled each day. So again, this is one of those write and solve problems. So it's a 2-part problem. You need 2 answers. So the first part we're going to have to do is find out what the equation was. So let's think about what they've given us. They've said a total, which was 680 miles, right? And they've said that it took them 58 days. So if we have 58 days, okay, hold on one second. So if we have 58 days and then they traveled some amount of miles each day, and then they got the total of 680. So the sum amount of miles each day could be your x, where x equals the number of miles each day. So this first part, which is 58x equals 680, this would be the first answer to your problem because this is the original equation. So now let's rewrite it again so we can work from it. And then we're going to identify the variable, which we said was x, and then we're going to find out what's being done to the variable. The variable is being multiplied by 58, so in order to undo that, we need to divide by 58. So let's go ahead and do that now. We get x equals, then off to the side, you could even do your division. So I've done the division off to the side here, and I found out that it's about 11.7, and then that would continue on for quite some time. So since the problem said about how many, we're just going to round that 11.7 up to 12 miles. So your answer here is going to be about 12 miles per day. And they used m instead of x. Either one would be fine. It doesn't matter which variable you use. All right, now we're on the top of textbook page 554, and we're looking at example 4. It says to solve 3.28x equals 19.68. So let's go ahead and first set the problem up, and although they've done it for us, we're still going to do it again. So 3.28x equals 19.68. So this is where it begins to be important that you understand the process. So because you can't just do this one in your head, and so you want to look at this and go, okay, what's my variable? My variable is x. What's being done to the variable? Well, the variable is being multiplied by 3.28. So let's go ahead and undo that multiplication by dividing by 3.28. Now we can't just divide one side. Remember that division of equality, division property of equality says that we need to divide them both by 3.28. So then we are left with x equals, and let's go ahead and do that division out to the side here. We have 19.68 divided by 3.28. Now I know I'm asking to reach back into your brains for this piece. Hold on one second. For this piece that tells you, sorry about the screen here, reminding you about how to divide with decimals. So before you can divide with decimals, you actually have to make this a whole number by moving that decimal out. So now we've moved that decimal out 2 spaces. We do the same to this one. And remember, when I say the same, I mean if this was 2 spaces, this also has to be 2 spaces. So it wouldn't matter if there was no decimal there at all. You would still have to make 2 more spaces. So our new division problem, again, is going to be 1968 divided by 328. So now that we think about that, let's go ahead and think 328, how many times? That might go in 6 times. So let's see. 328 times 6, 12, 4, 16, 18, 19. Oh, look at that. It's perfect. So now we find out that 328 times 6 is 1968. So we know that our answer here is x equals 6. Now, just to be thorough, we want to make sure that we plug that back into our original problem. So there's not a whole lot of room over here, but I'm going to go ahead and write it anyway. 3.28x equals 19.68. 3.28 times 6 equals 19.68. Then you would want to do that multiplication out to the side just to confirm. And you would find out that 19.68 is equal to 19.68 and that your answer is correct. Now go ahead and pause the video and try E, F, and G on your own, please. Alright, so the first thing that we're looking at here is 2.25n divided by 6.75. And that's actually a decimal. Sorry about that. That's also a decimal. Decimal. There. So the first thing we need to look at is what is our variable. In problem E, our variable is n. So we need to find out what's being done to n. Well, since there's numbers and letters next to each other with no functions in between, we know that n is being multiplied by 2.25. So to undo that, we are going to divide both sides by 2.25. Now sometimes people make a mistake and they write 2.25n that you're dividing by. You can't do that because then you've just moved your variable to the other side, because then you would cross simplify out the n here too. So we don't want to do that. So actually let me do that in a different color. So now that gives us 1, because 2.25 divided by 2.25 is just 1. So we've got 1n. And then off to the side with our division, we're going to have to figure out what 6.75 divided by 2.25 is. So let me go ahead and set that up now. All right, and a quick reminder, remember when dividing with decimals, you have to first make this number a whole number here. 2 spaces out, 2 spaces out. And again, the reason why the 6.75 had 2 spaces was because the 2.25 had 2 spaces. So now our new problem is 675 divided by 225. So let's go ahead and think about that and figure that out. All right, and you can see here that I just did a little guess and check, and I found out that 225 times 3 is equal to 675. So now I know my answer is n equals 3. And like I said, normally I want you to do your check out here to the right, but you can do it underneath for right now because this is probably only where you have some room. So again, to do your check, you need to write the original problem, which was 2.25. N equals 6.75. Then you want to do 2.25 times 3 equals 6.75. And then you get 6.75 equals 6.75. Check. All right, our next problem is 1.7b equals 8.5. So our variable in this problem is b, and we need to find out what's being done to b, and b is being multiplied by 1.7. So in order to undo that multiplying by 1.7, we have to divide by 1.7. And remember, because of the division property of equality, you need to divide both sides by 1.7 so that your equation still remains equal. So 1.7 divided by 1.7 just leaves you with 1b, and we represent that with just b. Then we can do the work off to the side to figure out what 8.5 divided by 1.7 is. Okay, so in the bottom left, you'll see that I've set that problem up for us. And again, before we even start dividing with decimals, we have to make this a whole number over here on the left. So we need to move the decimal out one space to do that. And then we need to have this one follow as well. So now my new problem is 85 divided by 17. And just through a little guess and check, I guessed that it would be 5. And in fact, it is 5. 17 times 5 is going to give you that 85 that you need. So now you find out that B is equal to 5. Go ahead and circle that. Then you want to do your check off to the side. So my check is going to start with 1.7b equals 8.5, and then 1.7 times 5 equals 8.5, and then 8.5 is in fact equal to 8.5. Check. And the reason why I'm not showing you the multiplication when I do the check is because I have the division over here. That's how I know that that's a correct answer. Alright, and as you can see here, we've set up our last example, and that's 6.15y equals 55.35. So the variable is going to be the y, and y is being multiplied by 6.15. So to undo that multiplication, we need to divide by 6.15. And because of the division property of equality, we must divide both sides by the 6.15 so that our equation remains equal. 6.15 divided by 6.15 just leaves us with 1, and then that y that was there before. And now again, just like before, we need to do the division off to the side to make sure we know what 55.35 divided by 6.15 is. Alright, and for this division, now that you've moved the decimal out, you have 5,535 divided by 615. Again, the best way to do this is probably just through guess and check. So when I do that, I'm thinking, 6 times 8 is 48, which is kind of close to that 55 that I'm trying to get to. 8 times 5 is 40, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 48, 49. Let's see, I might be able to get one more up, so let's try 615 times 9. And that gets me to the 5 that I need here at the end too. So 45, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 54, 55, and look at that, you have 55, 35. So that's exactly, so our answer is actually y is equal to 9. Okay, I know that's a little messy out here out to the side. So let's go ahead and erase a little bit of this over here so that we can do our check. But you don't erase it. You want to keep it on your paper. So for the check out to the side, we're going to say 6.15y equals 55.35. 6.15 times 9 equals 55.35. And 55.35 equals 55.35. Check. Alright, so your homework here is going to be textbook page 554, numbers 1 through 5. And I've actually done number 1 for you to show you exactly what I expect to see for all 5 problems. So all 5 problems, I should see the original problem right here. I should see what you divided each side by here. I should see you crossing that out there. And your answer right here. Then I should see you checking by writing the original problem here. I should see you substituting your answer right there. And I should see your equation equaling the same thing on both sides. Check. So this is what I'm looking for. I look forward to seeing you in class.